So, assuming nothing else goes wrong, we have Doom Tower right around the corner. And as you know, as I've said a few times, this is generally my favorite type of content in these games. It's my favorite thing to do in Summoner's War. I've spent a lot of time in TOA and Summoner's War, which is roughly the same type of content. There are apparently going to be some differences here, but I think a lot of the same things will apply. There will be the secret floors and some things that Summoner's War doesn't have going on just yet. But I think in general, the same types of strategies overall will apply. So I went through and I was just kind of glancing at some champs, trying to think who I wanted to start getting ready, how I wanted to start getting them ready. So I just went through and looked at the legendaries. There are, of course, other legendaries that are going to shine in Doom Tower that are going to have their place, but I just figured I would go ahead and talk about some that stand out to me right away without even giving it much thought. And then I'll probably go through and do this with epics, and I'll do it with rares as well. And then maybe we'll dig in a little deeper over the course of the next few videos where we talk about Doom Tower related things and see if we can't start really... I don't want to overcommit too hard, just in case it is very different than what I'm expecting. But based on what I know about this type of stuff, let's talk about some champions that I do think right out of the gate stand out. First one is Shiramani. You'll notice a theme as we go through and talk about these champs. You'll notice that there's a theme here, and we're just going to kind of go in order. So she's the first one on the list. Now, she's got a very reliable A3 freeze, very reliable crowd control, which is going to be very nice in these waves that you're going to encounter as you go through Doom Tower, okay? So, one, she's bringing very reliable crowd control with turn meter cycling, right? She's giving herself more turns. You book her up, this gets down to 5 turn cooldown, 100% chance to freeze, so she just needs accuracy. Gonna be very handy. On top of that, she is bringing some really good sustain to the team, and then more random crowd control, right? So she's gonna do a really good job of keeping enemies locked down for a large portion of the time that you're standing in front of them, right? She's going to be really, really good. It's a very simple kit. It's very straightforward. It's freezes and heals, and you're done, okay? Very simple, not hard to build. She's going to need to be fast. She's going to need to be accurate. And then, in general, you're going to want these people to be kind of tanky so they can take a hit should they have to. But having her on the team is probably going to alleviate how often you have to take a hit, right? Short of an affinity issue, but probably still wouldn't be too bad. So I think she's going to stand out. Another high elf, the only one I don't have, is Lisandra. We're talking turn cycle madness here, right? We know what Lisandra does. She's got a speed lead for everywhere, so her speed lead should work there as well. She's got debuff transferal. She's got fully depletes target's turn meter, which paired with crowd control, if you're in a situation where you're having to manual, which you will probably in the deeper stages of this, picking the right targets for this is going to be crucial, okay? You've had a little bit of exposure to this type of stuff in Faction Wars, but it's going to be different in Doom Tower. I imagine the compositions are going to be very different, and I think it's going to be a different kind of ramp up, right? I think it's going to be a different kind of difficult. I hope anyway. I hope that it's going to be a different type of difficult than what we've seen in Faction Wars, right? So this is going to be very important, and then if turn meter depletion works on the bosses, this is going to be huge. This is going to be a huge thing to have, because in Summoner's War, when those bosses take turns, when you get to floor 100, or the mini bosses at every 10 stages, whatever it is, but especially the boss on floor 100, which is the last floor, having this, being able to knock their turn meter back is very important, because every turn they take is crucial, right? Every turn they take is so impactful that denying turns is going to be huge here. So this is going to be really nice. And then here, turn cycling for the team. Again, we know why she'll be there, but it's the emphasis should not be taken lightly on how important she's going to be for that. Moving right along, we've got Martyr. Now, Martyr's another example of crowd control. Different type enemies are still going to be able to take turns with her crowd control, but it's going to be A1s. They're going to go after her. We know what Martyr does. So this AoE provoke with the attack down, as long as it's not defensive damage dealers, this will also decrease the amount of damage she has to take. But this will be huge, and we'll talk about some other things that make this even crazier as we get on. But This is going to be huge. Here, you've got defense buff and counterattack for the whole team. This is also going to be really, really nice. And then an A1 defense break, which for the bosses and for individual targets that you're trying to take down, let's say you're running the crowd control and you've got one target that you're focusing, she can put the defense down up and get them out one by one, assuming you're not running an AoE heavy team. Assuming AoE heavy teams are even going to be viable here, right? As I said, when you get up into the harder stages of this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to just wipe waves and do AoE damage, so it's going to be all about crowd control and picking your targets. You know, like when you're in Faction Wars and you've got to deal with those Valkyries, you try to lock everybody down and get those Valkyries out of there, right? So, same thing, along those lines. Next is Rosin. Now, I think Rosin just continues to get slept on because of being a permanent fusion, but up to this point, and I don't see this ever changing. I can't imagine a type of content that Rosin would not shine in. There is nowhere in this game that you can't take Rosin, in theory, and have Rosin do amazing things. Everything in this kit is impactful. You've got an AoE turn meter reduction, full turn meter reduction, okay? And if you pair this up with crowd control, it's just disgusting. So AoE turn meter reduction by 100%. We've got defense down and weaken in the same skill here. And then on the A1, we've got a 3-hitter with buff strip. So, like I said, there's nowhere you can't take Rosin. I do think Rosin, there's just this assumption that Rosin must not be that good, because if Rosin was that good, they wouldn't have made it a permanent fusion. But Rosin's that good, fantastic. And the resistance lead in arena is great. Not going to do as much good here, but this specifically is what stands out for me, the AoE turn meter reduction, because again, if you compare this up, if you can get a good stun set on Rosin, and Rosin can land the stuns, you can pair this up with someone like a Shiramani. This is extra turns of someone being completely out of the fight, you know what I mean? So that's huge. And then again, this is going to be really nice for the bosses, and it's probably not too unlikely to think that we're going to have bosses that buff themselves. So this buff strip could also come in very handy. I imagine that Rosin will stay right on track here, and Doom Tower will just be another example of another piece of content that you can take this champ into and do some crazy things, because that's a really good champ. Next in line, we've got Hackhorn Smash Lord. Big fan of this champ. This is another one I think it gets slept on. Everybody, there's a tendency to think, if it's not a farmer, it's not good. If it's not an AoE devastator, it's not that good. But this skill right here, this is a full team, full cleanse, followed by block debuffs for 2 turns with masteries. Occasionally, you'll get to 3 turns, which I do see a lot out of this champ. Heals all allies by 15% of his own HP. Heals by an extra 10% of his HP for each debuff removed. His HP is very high by default, very easy to scale. This becomes a very powerful heal, and the full team full cleanse followed by immunity for 2 turns is, like I said, it really is crazy. It's probably the best. I can't remember if Sifi does it or not, but it's among the best support skills in the game. It doesn't get any better than what this one does. All in one skill, right? This means you put enough resistance. The way that I use Hackhorn in my arena team is with high resistance on a frenzy set. So I can go into a situation where someone has a cleave or a lot of crowd control. We take all our hits. Everyone gets stunned. Everyone gets debuffs put on them, except Hackhorn. The frenzy set pushes Hackhorn up into getting a turn. He cleanses heals and puts up block debuffs on everybody, and we're right back in the fight. It's such a powerful support skill, and having this in Doom Tower is going to be really nice, especially on a 4-turn cooldown, or if you're running cooldown reducers like a Painkeeper or something like that, where Hackhorn just gets to keep doing this. He's basically going to keep debuffs off your team permanently and let your team work. He's also got an A1 stun just for icing on the cake, which can be very clutch, and 40% is not that low of a chance. You can get it up to 55% if you wanted to skill it up. And again, when you're picking and choosing, when you're in a situation where you're having the manual and it's important, everything you do matters a lot, picking someone for him to try to stun, to remove from a turn, could be the difference in winning and losing the fight, right? This could end up being very important there. And then here we've got the sacrifices equal to 25% of his HP and nukes the enemies. And it's a cool skill. It's a nice thing for him to have. He can contribute damage as well. This is not really why I think he's going to be that great for this. It's really his A2 and then the potential utility in the A1 that is going to be really nice. So A3 is, again, a little bit of icing on the cake, but the real icing on the cake, I think, is the A1 stun. This stuff's going to be crucial when it starts to come down to the wire. So if you've got a Hackhorn, one, you should be using Hackhorn anyway, but I think specifically having that block debuffs, that cleanse and block debuffs in Doom Tower is going to come in really, really handy. Next in line, we've got Prince Khaimar, and he's always been an interesting case to me. This has always been an example of a champion that I don't think is getting used to his full potential in this game. He kind of only gets used to reset the damage potential of a speed dungeon team, right? That's really the only way I ever see him get used. And he's got so much more to offer than just being in speed runs. Like that's a powerful place to be in, to be that important for that. But he is capable of so much more. He's one of the ones that when I first started playing Raid, I looked at his kit and it stood out to me. Like I was thinking, if there was someone like this in Summoner's War, the game would be broken. It's such a strong kit, and having him in Doom Tower is going to be really strong. If we take examples of some of the champs we've talked about here, like let's say you've got a team that also has Shiramani and Rosin. So you've got Shiramani kicking things off with the freeze, and then Rosin comes in, maybe third or fourth in the turn order, after they've had a chance to have their turn meter boost up a little bit. Rosin resets them, and then they get that turn and that goes away. Khaimar comes in and resets cooldowns for the whole team. Shiramani freezes again. Rosin resets turn meters again. Now you've basically locked them down for 4 turns. You know what I mean? You've taken 4 turns away from them at this point. And then his A2 removes all buffs and puts them to sleep. So now you've got another turn that Khaimar offers potential for you to steal from them, right? And you can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown with skill ups, this down to a 6-turn, and then he's got A1 poisons if he crits. So he's got a lot more potential than just resetting damage for speed teams. He could be used in a lot of different ways in Arena, and I think I'm going to start trying to do that. And I really think there's some potential for him to shine with the right champions in Doom Tower. I don't think he's a champ you could just stick on the team and rest on that. It's going to need to be set up a certain way, but coming in behind someone like Shiramani and or Rosin and enabling them to do that cycle again should put you in a position where you're good to go. You know what I mean? And then again, full buff strip, all buffs, all enemies, and follows that up with a sleep in the same skill. So you take everything away from them and you take their turn away from them. That's pretty nasty. A1 poisons to boot, right? Helps take down damage. And then the arena speed lead, which again isn't going to do as much help. But Khaimar is a very powerful champion, and I don't feel like he's been getting used to his full potential. So I'm excited for Doom Tower to come out and give this dude an opportunity to shine, because that really is just a crazy kid. Next, we've got Gaius, who was the recent fusion. Now, this one might, I think, as has been the tone with a lot of the fusions lately, the general consensus is that people are not a big fan and they don't think these champs are good. Gaius is going to shine in Doom Tower. It is not uncommon in content like this for there to be waves that are similar to the Sathalia Thinasol waves or the Valkyrie waves, where you've got 2 and 3. You've got a duo and a trio of champs. It's also not uncommon to have a wave of 5 that is all one champ, okay? And the reason that is important when we're talking about Gaius is because of this skill right here. Attacks one enemy, puts the target's skills on cooldown. Now, what that means, if anybody's unfamiliar with the lingo, what that means exactly is it's as though they just use the skill, okay? So it's not like it increases the cooldown by 1 or anything. This means it puts the skill on full cooldown like they just used it. So you take someone like a Khaimar, for example, who we were just looking at, and this is on a 6-turn cooldown skilled up. If Gaius goes before Khaimar and uses this on him, well, now he's got to wait 6 turns before he can use it again, okay? So, and it's not just the one skill, it's all of the skills, right? Puts the target's skills on cooldown. So all of that enemy's skills go on full cooldown like they just used them, which means they basically just get to A1 for a while, is what that means. If the team has any duplicates of the target champion, we'll also put all their skills on cooldown, okay? So let's say there's a wave in Doom Tower that's, I don't know, 2 Shiramanis and 3 Khaimars. I don't know why that would be the case, but let's say it's the case. And you hit 1 Khaimar with this A2, you put him and both other Khaimars on full cooldown. So all he's got is A1s for a while, okay? This is going to be crucial for certain stages. This is going to make things so much easier. This is going to remove so much headache from so many stages in Doom Tower, assuming they follow the general outline, right? It's possible they won't do that at all, and there will never be any duplicate champions on any waves, but historically, in Summoner's War and in other games I've played where there are towers like this, they really like the 2s and 3s type combos, or the all 5s, right? So that this skill alone is going to be huge in there. It's going to be huge. You can get it down to a 3-turn cooldown, which means in a situation where, let's say you've got the 3 Khaimars, Khaimar will never get to A3. If anyone has cooldowns longer than 3 on any of their skills, they're not going to get to use them. Gaius can completely remove someone's skills from the fight. Okay, and this is important not only in Doom Tower. We're talking about Doom Tower right now, but this is important anywhere. If you go into Arena, wherever you go, if anyone's got cooldowns longer than that, Gaius can remove those skills from the equation, barring some sort of crowd control or you know, something like that. Some external circumstance, someone giving the more turns or resetting or whatever. But just by default, it's permanent removal, right? So that's going to be huge. That's going to be just borderline unmatchable in there. That's going to be really, really nice to have in there, okay? On top of that, we've got an AoE, 2 random buff strip, and turn meter reduction. And then if Gaius' HP is low, a little more turn meter reduction. But this is another skill where it's like, I don't think people are appreciating it enough. It's a AoE 2 buff strip with turn meter reduction, AoE turn meter reduction. So again, any opportunities you can take to keep the enemies from getting turns, the better. And buff strips are always nice. If they happen to have a block debuffs up, especially, it's nice. But getting speed buffs off, getting attack and defense buffs off, these things are crucial. Continuous heals can be especially annoying when you get to the higher levels, and it takes so much to knock these enemies down. Any buffs. So this is an impactful skill. And then the A1, you've got block cooldown skills for 1 turn, and again, this is very important. If you've got a fast team and you've got a good booster, and Gaius can get 2 turns before the enemies can get 1. Now, if we're talking about that Shiramani Khaimar wave, that fake wave we made up a second ago, let's say we reset all the Khaimars with our first turn, we block cooldown skills with the Shiramani with our second turn. Now, if there's anyone else on the team that can do anything about that last Shiramani, that's it. That's all the rest of the team has to worry about, because Gaius has taken most of the team out of the fight, right? Now, Shiramani can still freeze with her A1, so in some cases, it's still some waves could still be a little bit of a headache, but you see what I'm saying, right? There's a lot of potential for this champ to lock down most of the enemy team and leave very little on the weight, or very little weight on the shoulders of the team. And then the passive, again, just icing, prevents this champion's death and keeps them alive on 1 HP when hit by a fatal hit. If this skill prevents this champion's death, heals them by 10% of their max HP, fills their turn meter by 20%, and places shield buff on them equal to 30% of their max HP for 2 turns. Will not prevent this champ's death if they are under a heal reduction buff. Now, this is important in general. Something I actually just thought about. I'm not sure this, because it's not putting up an unkillable buff. So block buffs doesn't stop this. And someone who can hit through an unkillable buff doesn't get to hit through this. This seems like it happens regardless. Seems like the only way to stop this from happening is to put up a heal reduction buff. So again, not super crucial to anything we're talking about here, just kind of icing on the cake for this champ. Next in line, we've got Nethril. Nethril's always been kind of a sleeper. I don't know. I don't feel like he gets the widespread appreciation he deserves. There's people that know that Nethril's a beast, and then it seems like there's a lot of people that don't, right? I think Nethril shined a bit back in the day, and then, I don't know, for some reason, I feel like this dude's never gotten the respect he deserves. But let's talk about him. We've got an A3 AoE 75% turn meter reduction. You can get it down to a 4-turn cooldown, which is disgusting. We've talked about this with Rosin. So while it's not 100%, it's plenty. You know what I mean? It's close enough to 100%. Very strong skill. We have another AoE that has a 50% chance to stun all enemies for 1 turn, places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns if the target is not under a stun debuff. So we've got a stun and a slow here. AoE crowd control, AoE slow. These are both very, very important. If you can put an AoE slow on the enemy team and you've got a booster or your team is just fast, you can start to run extra laps around the enemies. And again, in situations where you've got Gaius and these turn meter knockback champs and this crowd control, you're basically going to prevent them from ever getting a turn, right? It's a good chance to stun. It goes up quite a bit with skill ups. So, I mean, it's all but a guaranteed stun if the accuracy's there, right? It should be a very reliable stun for you for the most part. Someone may squeak through every now and then, but should be pretty reliable. So we've got 2 very strong skills here. Both of them can get down to a 4-turn cooldown, and both going to be crucial for this type of content. And then in situations where you get to a boss, now we've got poisons. We've got a lot of poisons we can stack on the boss on top of turn meter reduction, right? You probably can't stun the boss. And if you don't have another AoE or another slow, if you can even put slow on these bosses, we'll see if you can do that. But you could get into a situation where you just knock back turn meter if you can. And if not, then you just stack poisons, right? This is a lot of poisons. And another nice thing about Nethril is he doesn't need a lot of books. And his books are impactful, right? Getting this debuff chance up to 50 is going to be huge. Getting the cooldown here is going to be huge on top of the debuff chance. And then here, getting the cooldown. So not a lot of books. Strong without him, gets much stronger with him. And again, an example of a champion who basically everything he does is very impactful at any stage of Doom Tower, no matter what you're doing in there. Should be very, very meaningful. Another one I want to talk about is Ray. We have a lot going on here with Ray. Now, she's a damage champ, so you're probably going to want to be able to protect her a little bit. But for everything that she's bringing with her, there's crazy potential here, especially if you could get her on a good stun set and add some crowd control to her kit. But she's got a very reliable A3 freeze. It's an A3, it's an AoE strip and freeze, by the way. So like earlier we were talking with Khaimar, the strip followed by the sleep. This is that on steroids, basically, because you can't hit somebody and wake them up from a freeze, right? Khaimar, he can strip and put them to sleep, but then if you hit them, they wake up. Here, they're just locked down. So this is a really, really strong skill. You can get it down to a 6-turn cooldown, which is a bit long, but again, in the types of teams you're going to be building for Doom Tower, it shouldn't matter too much, right? You should be able to get this off pretty regularly. So AoE strip, that means it doesn't matter what they have, block debuffs, whatever it is, she takes them all off, all buffs, and puts a freeze, okay? Very strong skill. She's also got good multiplier. She does really good damage. Here we've got an AoE, inflicts 50% more damage against targets under debuffs. You're definitely going to be bringing debuffs, right? You're going to be wanting poisons where you can get them. You're going to be wanting crowd control where you can get them. Slows, attack downs, defense downs, all of these things you're going to want to be bringing. There should always be debuffs up unless someone on the enemy team is just cleansed. And again, if you can get her on a stun set, now we're talking about a stun, a potential AoE stun. Disgusting. And then an A1 defense break that skilled up gets to 50%. An A1 AoE defense break. A1 AoE defense break. I have never felt like this has gotten the praise it deserves when people talk about Rey. And no one really like talks bad about Rey or anything, but this is ridiculous. This is crazy. This is a crazy skill for someone to have with everything else that she has. So she can keep defense break up. She's going to do a lot more damage to targets under debuffs, which she can put up herself. And then we've got buff, strip, and freeze. And again, on a stun set, there's massive potential for permanent lockdown here. And she's really good AoE damage. She's going to help you get through these waves faster, right? You won't have to rely on max HP damage. You won't have to rely on poisons. She can speed it up a little bit, right? She's probably not going to be wiping waves in the later stages, but she can certainly speed things up for you. Going to be excellent in there, I think. And then last that we're going to talk about today is Tomb Lord, who is kind of a monster for real. His skills are interesting, and I think they're going to be really nice in Doom Tower. So we've got decreases the turn meter of all enemies with less than 50% HP by 100%. Self-explanatory. Has an 80% chance of placing a decreased attack for 2 turns, and an 80% chance of placing a decreased defense for 2 turns. Gets an extra turn if an enemy's turn meter is decreased by the skill, okay? So, we've got AoE turn meter reduction if their HP is less than 50%. If that happens to anyone, he's going to get another turn here. Okay, that's important to note. It's also AoE decrease attack and defense. This means 1, you're opening up all the enemies to taking more damage, and 2, no matter what their multiplier is, I guess unless it's HP, which there's not a lot of HP nukers that you really have to worry about. So really any solid damage dealers, no matter what their scale stat is, they're doing less damage now. So he makes them susceptible to more damage, he removes their damage potential, and potentially resets their turn meter and keeps them from getting a turn. Gives himself another turn if anyone is affected by the turn meter part of the skill. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. That's very strong. And again, in situations, if any of these bosses can be affected by turn meter manipulation, this is going to be huge. Because it's not unthinkable that you'd have a boss that would get stronger the lower the HP got. So if you're in a situation where the boss has 40% HP, you lay this on him, you take away a turn. Could be huge. Timed properly, this could be a very huge thing to be able to bring with you into Doom Tower. Also very handy on the waves as well. A2, attacks one enemy, has a 70% chance of placing 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 1 turn. 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 1 turn. If the hit is critical, has a 70% chance of placing 4 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 1 turn. So what does this mean? It means build him with crit rate. Don't worry too much about his ability to do impact damage. Get the crit rate on him. If you have to, go crit rate on the gloves. Don't worry too much about his crit damage. You want him landing critical hits with this skill, because skilled up, is that 100% chance? It is. It's 100% chance skilled up on a 3-turn cooldown. And it's basically AoE, 4 AoE poisons, right? So you'll need the accuracy on him to land them, but this is going to be huge for speeding up waves, right? Again, when you're in a situation where you can't nuke your way through them. And the nice thing about it is that it's 1-turn poisons. So they're going to go up and they're going to get used, right? There's not a lot of room for them to get cleansed. There's not a lot of room for it to get interrupted, right? They go up and it happens. And if you pair them with someone like an Eleneril or a Zavia, obviously even better, right? But this is going to be really nice for waves, and this is going to be really nice for bosses, because that's going to be a really good way to tick down these bosses is poisons, and this dude just pours them on enemies. So huge skill here. And then here we've got a 3-hitter on the A1 with a speed debuff. Fairly self-explanatory. If you can slow the bosses, this is going to be very nice to have on top of everything else he's bringing. And again, if you need to pinpoint specific targets on specific waves, putting a slow on them is going to be very important. So I think this dude's really got some potential to shine. And he's, again, kind of like Nethril. I feel like this dude does a lot and has a lot of potential, but not a lot of people really know about it for some reason. Not a lot of people are really interested or excited about this dude like they are about some other champs. So Doom Tower should be fun. It should be fun. It should hopefully put a spotlight on some other champs that are really good, that aren't getting a lot of love right now, and maybe let other champs like Prince Khaimar kind of have their full potential start to be seen, because I don't think Khaimar gets used enough. So that's it. That's some legendaries that I think are going to stand out in Doom Tower. Now, again, of course, there are many others that are going to be great, and I'm sure that there's going to be some I didn't list here that maybe some of y'all are going to be like, hey, why didn't you talk about this one? This is just 10 that I wanted to talk about. So it was 10, right? Pretty sure it was 10. I don't know, man. But if you guys like this, we'll come back. We'll do it again with epics. We'll go through and do it with rares. And then maybe we can start talking about some potential teams, or maybe the structure of certain teams you're going to want to be putting together for Doom Tower. I'm excited. I hope that Doom Tower is not a letdown. I really hope that it's good when it comes out. I hope that it gives us something to do and it's exciting and the rewards are worth it. And you know, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I am optimistic. I am excited about it. Really looking forward to having something to do. And yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think about this, if this was helpful at all. If there's any champs I didn't talk about that you want to make a case for down below, like I said, I'm definitely open to that, and more information in the comments is always better. So I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you later.